Hey, how you doing? We're going to go ahead and look at some of your videos from this past week here, starting off with the deadlift. So first thing I want to talk about is going to be the deadlift. 5 count eccentric is going to be on the way down. So we don't want to do that. That's a 5 count concentric. So that's on the way up for the deadlift. For the squat, eccentric means on the way down. For the bench, on the way down. But for the deadlift, it's going to mean on the way down as well. But for the bench press and the squat, it's the first motion you experience. And for the deadlift, it's the second motion experience. You bring it up, then you bring it down. But eccentric is the down for the deadlift. So, or the always lengthening of the muscle, not the contracting, the shortening. With that being said, you're doing a much tougher variation, so you're going to be able to handle a lot more load once we fix that and do the actual eccentric. So that's probably the biggest thing. In terms of patterns, there's a lot of issues that come from not controlling our cervical spine. So if somebody has issues, lumbar extension, lumbar flexion, some lumbar spine issues with the lower section of our spine, it's concerning. Thoracic spine, which is just above lumbar, less concerning, but still concerning. Cervical is one of the lesser talked about, but it still matters very much. And if we crank up on our cervical spine, which is the part of my spine that's right behind my head. If we crank up on it, technically we're not in a neutral spine position, and it can put a lot of extra tension on our traps, on our neck musculature. A lot of people get tension headaches from this, and it can even hurt the power transfer somewhat and cause some issues downstream. So it's just a good idea to do our best to keep our head perfectly neutral, and it doesn't matter where I hinge, I'm keeping it neutral. I don't want to be here for my deadlift. It's only going to hurt our pattern. So go ahead and try your best to keep that chin tucked and don't let it deviate from a neutral spine position. Now, one thing I want to work on is going to be your hinge mechanics. Hinge mechanics, you can always tell that someone has issues with hinge mechanics if they have to travel over their knees on the eccentric portion the way down of a deadlift. So what I mean by that is we need to have our most of the motion on the way down from our deadlift be at the hip, flexion at the hip, and not flexion at the knee. So what I mean by that is, I'll give you a quick example here. If I'm getting ready to deadlift here, and I'm going down, 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 and then I flex at the knee too much, and the barbell ends up having to go over my knee. That can cause some issues, puts a lot of strain on our spine. It's just not good mechanics to have. Instead of flexing at our knee that early, we want all of the flexion on the way down to happen at our hip, at our hip, at our hip, and then once we get to knee level, that's when we have at the knee. Knee is the very, very last second, and those are going to be hinging mechanics that actually carry over really well into other lifts as well. So let's go ahead and have that not happen. So looking at what I'm referring to here, as you can see, you come up fairly well, and on the way down, we end up having to travel over those knees every time. So ideally, from the up position to down position, we're not flexing at our knee that early. We're slowly going hip, 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 hip. Once we get to about knee level, then we flex the knee, and you won't have to travel over your knees like this and get out of position. So there's two big things I want to talk about with the bench press. First off, I need to see better scapular depression. So I need to see this before you bench every single time. The reason why is because it's going to protect your shoulder better. You're going to use your lats better, what's stronger, your chest, your triceps, your delts, or your lats. Lats every single time. Lats end up being a very important spine stabilizer. They're extremely important, but we can't utilize them correctly if we do not depress our scapula. So we end up protecting our shoulder better, we engage our lats and have better stability, and most importantly, recruit more muscle fibers specifically in the chest. There's some individuals that'll bench for years and years and years, get nothing out of it but with their chest, even though it's known as more of a chest exercise, and the second they learn how to depress their scapula, their chest blows up, great for hypertrophy, also good for handling heavier loads safer. So we need to do this. Keep in mind, no change up here. We need to do this before every rep. Depress our scapula. Do it before every rep. Do it before you start the eccentric of every rep. And that's going to help your bench press massively. Okay. The second thing is I want to get out of the habit of going control, 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 and then bouncing off. You'll notice that there is not one good, like really good elite level bencher that does that. And the reason why is because the stronger you get, the more controlled you need to be, the slower you move heavier loads. And doing this last second, trying to use your muscle elasticity, really isn't a good move for longevity, nor is it a good move for development. So what I want you to do is get used to controlling the eccentric, going the same speed all the way throughout, and then up. If we end up dropping, oftentimes we end up elbows go crazy. We lose our stack position. We end up having shoulder issues, elbow issues, injury city. Then you have to take a few months off of lifting, and then you have to come back and have to get back to where you were, and that's a constant injury cycle that'll happen because we're trying to use way too much elasticity at the bottom, which is not even good for development. So what we got to do is get used to controlling that a little bit better. That's exactly what we're seeing here is overuse of elasticity. Actually, that wasn't a bad example at all. Actually, that was a good one. But there we go. That's what I'm talking about. So in the follow-up reps here, that's when it really starts happening. That there, and then we kind of lose our pattern there. So being more controlled in the eccentric is going to help massively. It's going to be a little more taxing energy-wise, but it's going to help a ton, and you're less likely to have this massive elbow flare, which is going to be really hard in the shoulder, really hard in the elbow. So in terms of development, in terms of anti-injury, in terms of longevity, we just got to be more controlled on the eccentric and really focus on keeping that elbow tuck on the way up. Now, we may do in the next block some stuff to specifically address that and get out of that pattern, such as 5-count concentric bench presses, which is on the way up for the bench press. They're very challenging, but at the same time, they're great for muscular development, and they're great for repatterning your bench press and not having those issues. So we very well might do that very soon.